some data files that I saved on a network analyzer, and I'm going to try to recall them on a simulator. So let's start off recalling the basic file. I saved it in hold mode and a state file, .sta. And here's the S12 and S21. The S12, just so we can remember one number at 1 gigahertz is about -4 dB, minus 3.96, and I wrote it here. And this is no correction because I've recalled an STA. There is no cal. Now if I recall the CST, it's still the -4 dB. There is no cal. Even though what the CST is, it's pointing to a cal set, but it doesn't include the cal set. The cal set was sitting on my actual network analyzer. The simulator doesn't have the cal set, so it's complaining. It's saying, I can't find this cal set, so I'm ending up with raw data. So now if I recall instead the CSA, this includes the cal set, so now I'm getting my corrected data, which is about 1.5 dB at 20 gigahertz. I wrote it down here. It shows a response cal. And if I go into the cal set viewer, I see I brought in a cal. So that's the difference between the three formats. Just to make it show you something here, if I go back and I recall that CST, the one with a pointer, it now doesn't give me the error, and it actually gives me the corrected file because the cal set was imported by the CSA. So if you're doing this on an actual network analyzer and the cal sets are there, it's not going to complain. CST or CSA will work because it'll find it. But if you're like emailing it to somebody or pulling it on the simulator and the cal set's not there, the CST does not include it. Now let's do the same with the files from sweep mode. So let's do the STA in continuous sweep mode. In continuous sweep mode, it has the settings like 10 megahertz to 44 gigahertz or whatever, but it doesn't have my data. It's just taking a new sweep. So if you're just doing production testing and you want to test the new DUT, this is maybe what you want. You don't want the old data. You want it to come up and test the new DUT. So this is not my old data, but it has all the settings. It's the same thing if I recall it in CST. It's the settings. Now, it's not giving me that error because it had the cal set. If I actually, if I delete this cal set, let me delete this. Close. I need to get rid of this box. If I recall, even in continuous mode, the CST, because it can't find the cal set, it'll complain, but it's a new sweep. So the main point here is the difference between a continuous, it's just taking new data. When you recall a one that was previously in hold, you actually get the data with it. So now let's recall the S2P files. I saved both raw and uncorrected. So if I recall the raw data, it puts it into channel 500. And if I put a marker at 20 gigahertz, this is the uncorrected minus 3.96. And it says C2 port, but this doesn't mean it's calibrated. In fact, if I turn this off, it's still minus 3.96. It makes no difference, cal on or off. Actually, it doesn't, this just means it's got 4S parameters or 2-port S parameter. If I had the cal set on this box somehow, note I didn't bring it in, it was on this box from the bath before. Let's not worry about this message. I can apply it and then I get my corrected data. So if I had the raw data and I had the cal set from somewhere, then I could apply it. And now if I turn off the cal, I can go back and forth between my raw and corrected data. Or you can recall the corrected data. This time I put it in 499 because 500 was taken, and this is corrected data. What you want to be very careful is not to reapply a corrected data to existing data. So now I end up with 7, which is completely bogus. This is a made-up number because I've double corrected it. So if you're saving S2P files, be very careful. Either name them so you know if they're corrected or not. And it says at the bottom if it's C response, or this one will say correction off. or make a note somewhere, because the file itself, it does say in there, but it doesn't stop you from doubly applying corrected data. And now I want to also point out that message, say what it is. Let's say recall data, test data raw. And there's no calibration. This is that C2 port. It is a calibration, but it's the idealized calibration of 0. So if I turn it off, it makes no difference. And that's not what I wanted. Let me put a marker on S21 at 20 gigahertz. There's my uncorrected. Now I can apply my CalSet 2. It says the settings you have are different than that. I get this message because when I recall, it brings it into channel 500 that has default settings. Like default settings are 100 kilohertz bandwidth, 10 megahertz to 44 gigahertz. This was my actual calibrated CalSet, and if I look at the properties, I calibrated with a 1 kilohertz IF bandwidth and 4400 points. So the points came in with the S2P, the frequency range came in with the S2P, but the IF bandwidth doesn't come in. The power would be the same story. So here, if I change this to 1 kilohertz and I apply this CalSet, then I don't get that message. But it doesn't matter actually, because it's just applying that CalSet. You're not actually taking a sweep. I just wanted to explain where you're getting that message from. So again, the main recommendation is, unless you're pulling it into some other tool, is to put it in hold and recall it as a CSA. This method is what we would recommend. You have all the data. You can do cal on and off, which either menu, correction on. Your CalSet comes in with it. And then if you want from here, if you're going to be pulling it into ADS, you can then go from here and save this data as an SNP file. And that's it.